start off by welcoming everyone here today for our chronic pain management seminar series. We are so excited to have Dr. Gryffin presenting for us today. My name is Dr. Gail Kemp. Many of you know me. I am a clinical psychology faculty member here at Mercer University's College of Health Professions, and we are really excited to host this opportunity. I want to start off by giving a expression of gratitude to the graduate assistants in this program. I have Kiana Faroon, Bria, um, Coppin, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Okay, good. And Amira Clark, who have worked really hard and tirelessly to bring us to this point. And I don't want to delay the event, but what I will start off by is just putting up our disclaimer, our acknowledgements and disclosures that this is a project supported by HRSA, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and it's a part of an award that we have in the chronic pain management program, where we're providing interdisciplinary training for psychology doctoral students on providing CBT for chronic pain. And so if anyone wants to know more information about our program, you can email us. We'll put the email. I'll ask actually one of the GAs to put the email address in the chat for more information, as well as the link to our web presence. Throughout this conversation this afternoon, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will help monitor those as well as just a kind of anything that you want us to address during this presentation. And now let me introduce our speaker. We are pleased to present to you Dr. Tony Gryffin, who is an associate professor with the Mercer University School of Medicine in the Department of Community Medicine. Dr. Griffin's research is in the area of health behavior and motivation at the community and individual level. His interests also include the application of mindfulness theory and practice to community medicine, and specific areas of research include the development of a theory-structured, blinded focus group process for a mixed method approach to researching and motivating health behaviors. An experiential and dimensional approach to motivating individual and community wellness using a storytelling narrative approach and investigations into a novel metabolic understanding underlying the benefits of exercises, which are neither aerobic nor anaerobic, such as slower paces of walking, Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga. And so turn over now to Dr. Gryffin, and welcome to our CPMP seminar series.
Thank you, Gail. Dr. Tony Gryffin, and Tai Chi has been a passion of mine for a long time. I started when I was pretty young, started originally as a martial art, which is the roots of Tai Chi. And then later, after I got my master's, was teaching at a community college, focus shifted a little more to health. Later, I was accepted for the PhD program at the University of Florida in health behavior and health education. Really interested in motivating behavior. You can have the best exercises in the world, you know, the best diet, the best program in the world, but if you can't motivate people to adopt those exercises, that behavioral aspect really fascinated me. And that ties a lot into the mindfulness aspect of Tai Chi and these exercises. So I'm going to start with just a brief overview of the mind part before we get it. And the focus on this is in chronic pain, and the mind and the body tend to be very connected. There's a strong connection between the mind and the body, and stress levels can really affect our sensations and feelings of pain. Within the mindful traditions, particularly from the Zen roots, storytelling has a long tradition connection with mindfulness. I could go through tons and tons of facts and journal articles and research, and it's all very impressive. You need that statistical validation of research and behavior and exercise and the like. But what you tend to really connect with and remember are the stories. And so I'm going to start with a story of a fireman named Bill. His name for the story here. But he was a fireman in New York, and after years of going into burning buildings, you know, dealing with facing death on a regular basis, and then 9/11 hit, and he was there, and the World Trade Building towers came down, and he was dealing with that disaster and the aftermath. Finally, it took its toll. He just was dealing with so much depression that he essentially just locked himself in his apartment. He could not leave his apartment. Going into downtown Manhattan, the stress levels were just so high. He had to quit his job. He could not go out and interact, lost his relationships. His best friend, who was also a fireman at this time, had hung himself. This sort of situation can really take its toll. So with dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder, he just really tried different therapies. Therapy helped tremendously. Going to counseling helped a lot, but he still couldn't quite overcome the fear and the anxiety that he was dealing with. And somebody recommended, hey, you should try a Tai Chi class. Just focus on the relaxation, just kind of focus on the movement. And so I thought, I'll try it. He got to the Tai Chi class and he started doing it. And what you get in his descriptions, in his write-up on this, was that he just essentially felt the demons just kind of retreated from his mind. The fear, the depression. When he's doing Tai Chi, so throughout the movements here, we're going to do some practice, some demonstration periodically throughout, but I'm going to show you a little bit. So Bill, he walks in and he's stressing depression. You're thinking about the past. You're worried about the future. You're worried about your situation. Your mind is just thinking. When you're doing Tai Chi, Bill starts focusing on the movements, and you're focusing on the leading hand, and the demons retreated. He's focused on slow, relaxed, deep breathing. When we're stressed, we tend to speed up our breathing. Part of the fight or flight response, the general adaptation syndrome, you get stressed, you're feeling fear, you're feeling depression, your body says, hey, I'm under attack, I've got to run. You slow down, you slow the breathing down, and just that tells your mind that things are okay. Then you're focusing 100% on the movements, and you're not thinking about the past, you're not worrying about the future, you're just focused on relaxing, which is hard to be stressed if you're relaxed. You're focused on the slow breath. Your mind is focused on the movements, and everything changes. So Bill went, after doing this for several months, fears of trains, he could go on the train again, go into lower Manhattan. He had relationship problems improved. He just really turned his life around. Again, in conjunction, he was also going through therapy and counseling. The two worked very, very well in hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a couple of slides just to go through some of the research, so you can see that there is research has been done on what happens with the mind when you're focused and when you're relaxed, and a little bit about the background on that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. And then we'll pop back into actually have you guys you practice and try some of the Tai Chi movements. So Tai Chi is a slow, breath-focused relaxation exercise. It was originally developed as a martial art. The idea that if you slow the body down, you learn to work on alignment, you learn to develop power when you're more relaxed. It's just a whole range of host of benefits. You're dealing with the fear that can come with combat. It just was a very slowing a martial art down, like Tai Chi, just really helped enhance it as a martial art. But it turns out that when you slow these exercises down, that they become very much like a breathing exercise. There's a series of exercises called Qigong, which literally translates as breathing excellence or breathing exercise. And Tai Chi, when you practice it for health and you're slowing down, focusing on the breath, is a form of Qigong. So over the decades, it's become more known as a health exercise when you practice with that intent. And that can actually be a barrier, and I'll be touching on that later. And then there's the mindfulness aspect. John Kabat-Zinn was one of the pioneers in this area, as mindfulness-based stress reduction. Typically with mindfulness, you think about it with sitting meditation, or just the concept and the awareness of mindfulness, the non-judgmental awareness focused in the present moment. Non-judgmental is a big part of that. You can't judge, is this a bad situation? Am I reacting poorly? Am I overwhelmed? Any kind of judgment or judgment of other people or judgment of situations Mindfulness, you're in the moment. There is no judgment. Focusing on awareness in the moment. So there's a lot of benefits from that. And the focus on this was generally on sitting meditation, counting the breath, and different things. However, the Zen roots of mindfulness have a long tradition with activity, and I'll touch on some of the other ways that you can develop that also. So essentially, it's non-judgmental awareness developed through learning to focus the mind on some focal point. It's not just sitting and not thinking. You're focusing so that you're not thinking. So sitting meditation, I'm going to make one adjustment here. So sitting meditation, there's a tendency to focus on, you count the breath 1 through 10, and you learn to do this consistently. If you lose track of your breath, you're suddenly on like 42, you've lost focus, or you don't know what number you're on. You learn to focus the breath and then count. You slow the breath down, and it helps with relaxation. And then you're counting the breath, that helps focus the mind. You can also use other focal points, mandalas, tracing patterns with your mind, with your eyes and the like. With Tai Chi, the focus for health and the martial aspect, this seems to have been lost with some of the way Tai Chi gets passed on. But one of the focuses and one of the primary focuses really beneficial for training the mind is you're, again, focusing on the hand as you're going through these movements. And you focus on the hand, and your mind doesn't think about the past, worry about the future. It's just present in the moment. And then there's Qigong, which it is a breathing exercise as a whole. There's one report I saw, said there's like 3,000 different types of Qigong exercises. And this can actually be a huge barrier because sometimes you don't know what you're getting into if you go into a Qigong exercise. But Tai Chi, sometimes they're generally presented as something separate. You got Qigong, you got Tai Chi, but really as a breathing relaxation exercise, Tai Chi is a form. The main difference with Tai Chi is it's a little more dynamic. You generally are moving back and forth, and the focus is more on balance. Sometimes you've been lifting up one leg, doing a kick or other movement, which isn't necessarily part of Qigong, which is generally done standing in place. Screen seems to be frozen here. So what happens in the mind when you focus it in a meditative state? If you're familiar with brain waves, I want to show you the range of brain waves because I'm going to show you a very simplified chart with your gamma waves and beta waves, and your daily activity. You're active and your mind's active. When you're more relaxed, it tends to slip a little more into alpha waves. Still can be alert, but associated with relaxation, light meditation, light sleep. And then you see the waves are getting less and less. They're kind of evening out a little bit. And then down into the delta waves with the deep sleep. Tomio Harai, let's see if this will work here. Awesome. Tomio Harai did a wonderful series of studies. He looked at everything from schizophrenia to how it compares to psychedelic drugs. There's a whole range of things. But what he's curious about is if we hook up the electrodes and get the brain waves from Zen monks, monks that have been meditating daily for some of these monks he measured were meditating for 20, 30, 40 years. How do their brain waves, when they're sitting relaxed, how do their brain waves differ in a meditative state? And on the one side where you see the large white area there with the alpha waves are very activated, the theta on the top row of the three, the theta waves and the delta waves. The one on the other side, which is primarily blue, there's one little triangle there, white, that's an untrained person. That was their control, their comparison group. So they saw that there's differences. When you take someone who's been training their mind to relax and focus, you see those differences. I'm going to share a very simplified view. So you see at the bottom there's a whole range of rows from the alpha through the delta waves and the different, depending on where you hook up the electrodes and the like. So I'm going to share a very simplified version. So we got at the bottom here, you got under arousal, where your brain is asleep, The level of cortical arousal, you're either in a state of sleep or drowsiness or hard to pay attention. And then there's over-arousal, where there's just too much stimulation, just the stress response, the panic response, kind of like the deer in the headlights, where just everything shuts down. And then there's right around the middle is optimal arousal, cortical arousal, where your brain is operating at peak efficiency. And a lot of this is based on when I took personality psychology, I think it was like 20 years ago with Isink. Some of this I understand has been updated a bit, but there still holds that it's a good way of thinking about it. And it still holds that there's some basic ideas of looking at the role of personality and dealing with stress and life and the life regarding to be under aroused, drowsiness, hard to pay attention, to over arousal, brain shutting down, to optimal arousal where it's operating at peak efficiency. It's a very useful way of thinking about things in relationship to mindfulness. So yeah, let's say you're deep asleep. It's you've been working long hours of school and work, and you're deep asleep. The alarm goes off, and you see the red light just shoots straight up to over arousal. Maybe you're so deep asleep you don't know if it's a work day, a school day. You're not sure if you're at your parents or at home, and you shut the alarm off. And you say, okay, I got to go to school today. And you start getting drowsy, you start falling asleep. Starts falling back to under arousal because you're just getting out of bed. And then you see that one area where you got kind of a zigzag right there across optimal arousal. That you hop in the shower. The student hops in the shower, and there's something about the sound of running water that tends to stimulate optimal cortical arousal. When I ask my students in the class, how many of you have had some of your best ideas in the shower? I get a lot of hands being raised up. There's something about running water that stimulates optimal levels of cortical arousal. That's why we like the ocean and waterfalls and the like. Jump out of the shower, you go to school, maybe getting a little drowsy, again, not paying attention. A cute guy or girl walks by, shoots up a little bit towards higher levels of cortical arousal stimulation. So all day long, your mind's going like a roller coaster, up and down, kind of hard to pay attention, to shut you down, to not paying attention. The person gets to school, they're sitting in a class, and all of a sudden, if you've had this experience, the teacher asks you a question, and all the eyes are on you, and all of a sudden your mind shoots up to cortical arousal. It just shuts down. It might be something like who's the first president of the United States, but everybody's looking at you, and all that stimulation, your mind just kind of shuts down, locks. Teacher figures you didn't study, goes to the next person, all the attention's off you, and then bam, the answer pops into your head. So all day long, you're going through this roller coaster of under, optimal, and over arousal. If you're ever been giving a talk in front of your class and you're kind of not comfortable with talks, you might every so often you start going and you're going and you're going ah. Every time you're umming or ahhing, it's kind of like the working symbol on a computer when it's retrieving data. The stimulation is just too much for your brain to function efficiently. So you can relax, bring it down a little bit, and you can start talking again. The more you learn to be relaxed, the less you'll find yourself umming and ahhing. If you're trying to pay attention in class, you might find yourself tapping your pencil or tapping your foot and trying to physically stimulate yourself to be able to increase the attention because sometimes classes aren't always the most interesting. So your mind, you have different ways to tricks and techniques, but one of the most effective ways of doing that is through mindfulness-based activities, through meditative activities, where you learn to train the mind through a focus. So we have the blue line here, and you'll notice it's pretty much throughout the entire day, staying through optimal arousal. You're not umming and ahhing during speaking. You're able to pay attention to traffic, to talk conversations, really listening to what people are saying. You're not falling asleep. You'll find that you can pay a lot better attention. Do you test anxiety? Tends to be a thing in the past. You got a question you can't answer, you just kind of relax, go on to the next question, knowing that odds are the answer will pop up into your head within a few minutes. So studies on this. This was a review of 218 studies, and they just looked at a whole range of activities that affect depression. So we're focusing on the mind part, which specifically with depression, then we'll come around to how this ties in with pain. The selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the depression medications by themselves, they weren't super effective. They helped, but a lot of the activic, aerobic exercise, strength training, Tai Chi, Qigong, You notice Tai Chi Qigong is not just it's having a being a strong advocate. For me, this exercise has done a lot. I would love to see that higher. There are a lot of barriers that can really impact the effectiveness of Tai Chi Qigong, which I'll get into. So depending on the teacher, the format, I can see it lower on that list. I can see it higher on the list. What's interesting is the top circled area there, exercise plus the depression medication. The two combined tend to be really effective. It's also interesting dance, just the music and the moving the body. Again, the mind and the body are strongly connected. You move the body, you use the body, and it tends to really help with the depression. But the mindfulness aspect, when it's incorporated into Tai Chi, and sadly, a lot of the modern schools of Tai Chi are not real focused necessarily on some of the mindful aspects, the mindful focus. There's been a lot of barriers and different influences on Tai Chi over the decades, but it's there and you focus, and just the relaxation can be a big benefit. So that brings us to the practice. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down for a minute. You can do this in your chair. Just push your chair away a little bit and watch out your elbow room a little bit. So this is a great exercise for people in wheelchairs, people who are bedbound. But if you like, push your chair to the side, stand up, and you just kind of follow me along. I'm going to take you through a Tai Chi movement called grasp bird's tail. It's done in place with a lot of Tai Chi movement. You'll be moving back and forth. With grasp the bird's tail, it's a lot like the stationary Qigong. It's all done in place, very focused with the relaxation in the hand. I'm going to do 3 movements or so facing the camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing with my hands. Then I'll do 3 facing away, which will be a little bit easier to follow. So one of the things with Tai Chi is there's a lot of shifting of weight. It's almost very relaxing, that shifting, that rocking. It's almost like being on a boat, just rocking gently on the boat. It's that alone is very relaxing. Or being a baby in your parents' arms, just gently rocking. And as you're moving, you're breathing in, sinking back, and then slowly breathing out as part of your body rises up. I'm just going to do this over and over again on the one side. You can circle the hands around, kind of like you're going to wave high, and then breathing out, sink forward. Breathing in, shifting to the upper hand, and then as the hands shift, the eyes shift to the leading hand. Go to the other side. And floats up. Sink back. You can make sometimes kind of like you're making a big ball, holding those big red exercise balls. And then shift forward, breathing out. So that's the first movement in the grasp the bird's tail section. It's called warding off. It's almost like you're offering somebody a towel here. Go to the other section, other side. And then the other 3 movements, after you've offered the towel or you ward off, you reach up like you're reaching up for a little ball. You roll that ball back, turn it over, and press the palms shifting forward. You go ahead and go to the last one, shifting back and shifting forward, hands float away. Shifting to the other side. Make the big ball. Right now your eyes can focus on me, but over time you get relaxed, comfortable with the movement. You focus on the hands, warding off, reaching up for the little ball, rolling back, slow breath in, and pressing forward. The 4th movement, sinking back, let the hands float away. I'm going to take you through 3 times each side. I'm going to face this way, so it'll be a little bit easier to follow. So you're sinking the weight a little bit, spine. We tend to store a lot of tension and stress in our back. In Tai Chi, you tip the hips a little bit, like there's a string on the tailbone, a string on the head, and that really helps with the spinal tension. So we'll start with just breathing in and warding off. Breathing in, going to the other side, breathing out. Make the big ball, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Do that one more time. Reach out for the little ball. So you're totally focused on the movement. You're totally focused on good spine alignment, slowing the breath down, pressing, sinking back, and drifting forward. Go to the other side. It's almost like you're casting out a net. Make the big ball, warding off. Reach up for the little ball. Roll back. Sink forward and press. Sink back. Breathing in and breathing out. We'll do that one more time. I'm going to try to slow it down even more. When your attention is totally focused on the movement, there's no stress, there's no anxiety, no worry about the future, the past. You're just focused, present. The oxygen levels increase, which I'll be talking about. I did this with a group, got them really comfortable with the movement. And then I set the timer. And at the end, I asked them of focused, relaxed practice, how long we've been doing this for. One more time, the other side. And they said 30 minutes. They said that it felt like it's just been a few minutes. And I told them the timer had been set for 30 minutes. And they were surprised. They just did not feel like any amount of time had passed at all. When you're totally focused, sensation of time ceases. Just focus on relaxing, slowly breathing in, relaxing, slowly breathing out. And ending, circling the hands around. This really expands the rib cage, brings in lots of air. And breathing out. So Tai Chi can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. I'll share again some stories at the end here with some of the barriers and limitations and opportunities. But just having a nice straight spine, slightly bent knees, and just focusing on relaxing and breathing, focusing on the range of movement, you're getting a lot of the benefits here. So I'm going to go into the section on the physiology and how that in particular ties into chronic pain. So just being relaxed can really help with sensations of pain, helps a lot with depression. And the pain part, we'll get into the physiology here. Little group here, they're all nice and focused on their movements, nice, relaxed. Let's see if the pointer will work now. It's a new battery, so it shouldn't be the battery here, but so if you ask your average Tai Chi teacher, even in a lot of the books, the journal articles, they'll look at the benefits, and then the scientists, they're curious, okay, is Tai Chi good for fibromyalgia? Is Tai Chi good for balance or blood pressure? And they hear about these stories, and they'll go out and they'll find a teacher, and they'll do a study with the group. They'll have their control group, their experimental group doing Tai Chi or Qigong. And then they ask the Tai Chi teacher, well, why did they get the benefits for pain? Why did they get the benefits for fibromyalgia or whatever condition? And the Tai Chi teacher will say, well, it's because of the Qi. And there's, with traditional Chinese medicine, I'll touch it in a few minutes about the depth and the breadth of Qi, but from a Western perspective, it doesn't necessarily explain a lot. If you're getting benefits, there's something physiologically going on in the body. And what brought my attention to really thinking about this was when I was teaching at the community college, I had 3 students over the years that came to the class because their cancer wasn't responding to treatment, and they heard that Tai Chi might be able to help. Now, I want to clarify and I want to stress, I am not saying that Tai Chi and Qigong is a cure for cancer. Any kind of exercise activity may help your body, natural healing abilities, may help with chemotherapy, but we really need good, valid, rigorous research before we can really make any kind of claims as to exactly how much Tai Chi may or may not be helping with actual cancer treatment. But these people felt that even just the belief that something can help you or cure you can sometimes have that effect. So these students came. Now, two of the students were in the early stages of cancer treatment. They told me their cancer wasn't responding to treatment, and at the end of the semester, it started responding. Whether it's the Tai Chi or something, I don't know. But the third student, Kathy, I'm going to call her Kathy. She was in palliative care, stage 4 cancer. Her doctor said she had about 2 weeks to live. She had the scarf on her head, and just really a lot of pain, a lot of agony, just dealing with essentially facing the end of her life here through cancer. And she had heard that maybe Tai Chi could help. She came to my class, and she didn't have the whole semester. So if her doctors really said 2 weeks. So I said, well, you know what? Let me go home, make you a video that talks you through the form tomorrow and the 8 treasures, the Qigong breathing exercises. And I will go through it with you tomorrow, and you can try it every day and see if you get some benefit. So she started doing the video, and she had some pretty significant changes. She had been taking 5 maximum doses of morphine. Here's where we start getting to the pain. And there's a lot of research. One of the most cited benefits with different studies across a range of conditions is whether it's a benefit for the condition or not. There have been a lot of studies with breast cancer and Tai Chi and the like. They haven't found a significance with breast cancer, but they have possibly due to some limitations, which I'll touch on. But they have found in pretty much uniform across the board benefits for the pain. With Kathy's situation, she had been taking 5 maximum doses of morphine a day for the pain. Within 10 days of doing Tai Chi every day, she was completely off of morphine. That, as she said, was just a blessing, a huge benefit there. And that, I think you can pretty close from the studies and the amount of research done that there's probably a good association there with the Tai Chi practice and the Qigong practice and the pain. But then she went from 2 weeks to 3 weeks to 3 months. Their family moved out of state, so and at the time I was just teaching Tai Chi as part of a college class, so I didn't really think to find out what happened. But I understand that cancer kept coming back, but she went from 2 weeks to 3 years, and that was really before she moved, and that was really something. So I was curious, okay, why, if you ask your Tai Chi teacher about, I would have said to the students, okay, it's the Chi, but I thought there's something physiologically going on here. So I started researching cancer. What I found is that you do not have capillaries that go to every single cell in your body. Oxygen, the capillaries go through the cells, but there's anywhere from 10 to 20 cells between each capillary. And oxygen in your body has to diffuse through all those cells to be able to function. Cancer, what I found, work of Otto Warburg, is that cancer, as it grows, it uses a sugar-based rather than an oxygen-based metabolism. And as tumors grow, they distance the capillaries, and you get these oxygen deficient, these hypoxic, oxygen deficient areas. So I thought, well, maybe when you focus on relaxation and breathing, it helps your body use oxygen more efficiently, so chemotherapy and the like can work better. Then I found a study by Timur Malachi at University of Purdue in Indiana, and he was curious about oxygen. Oxygen deficiency makes it really hard for chemotherapy and radiation therapy to work effectively. So he developed a little implantable micro oxygen generator that was ultrasonically powered, implanted on the tumor in rats and generating oxygen. The rats that had this, their tumors became benign and were absorbed by the body in conjunction with the chemotherapy. The rats that didn't have the implantable micro-oxygen generator, the cancer progressed and they died from the condition. So this showed that, well, maybe when you relax, slow your breath down, breathe deeper, that maybe your body is using oxygen different. Now, what's interesting is that the Qi tends to be looked at as this energy force. So you ask your average person, say, well, the energy force the universe should be coming in harmony with. And there's a lot of value with looking at a very broad cultural view. But again, I was curious physiologically from a Western perspective, what can we measure? But it is worth noting that if you look up Qi in a Chinese English dictionary, the first definition is air, oxygen. So when you have Qigong, and Gong can translate, it's used in a lot of different ways, but generally it's like excellence, breathing excellence, or sometimes used as the exercise with like Kung Fu and the like. but essentially, the literal translation is breathing exercise. There's a wonderful book, A Brief History of Qi, and it goes through the historical development of the word. There's actually 22 different definitions of qi within the Chinese cultural language, and a lot of those are looking at energy use in the body. But energy use in the body comes from oxygen metabolism. And it looks at I asked my teacher about it. His family had been teaching these arts since the 1800s. And he said, yeah, 90% of the time, qi is just efficient oxygen use in the body. 10%, you might be looking at anything from spirit to the mind or a lot of other factors. But it really shows that there is maybe something with oxygen use in the body that underlies chronic pain and a lot of other conditions. So then I was curious, well, what happens if you measure oxygen use in the body? So we got a $200 medical oximeter. This is hard to pick up with your average over-the-counter oximeter because those tend to measure oxygen levels every like 20 seconds or so. And I wanted to make sure if there's any changes that it would catch it. So the no-in fingertip oximeter measured about every 6 seconds or so. Well, in the one chart where you see it goes down a little bit and then up a little bit, there's no statistical increase or decrease. As a whole, it averages out pretty much. But when you run, when you do cardiovascular high impact exercise, the oxygen levels don't tend to change a lot. If you do super, super vigorous, I'm talking about elite athletes, actually you can drop down quite a bit down below normal levels. The normal low is generally around 94%. If it drops below that, you're in the hospital, they'll generally, the alarm will go off and they'll come and check, make sure you're okay. But what's interesting is in the Tai Chi group, it went up statistically consistently during these exercises. You're relaxed, you're breathing slower, and your oxygen, it seems you're bringing in, there's more oxygen in a circulatory system. Now, this is very superficial. There are so much to really go into and looking at the difference between arterial and venous blood and oxygen and the like, but that these measurements were occurring indicated there's something going on. What was really interesting, I was not expecting to see this, is there would be a huge drop afterwards, just for a few seconds. As soon as you stop, or you're doing about 20 minutes of Tai Chi or so, you stop, the oxygen's going up while you're doing it, and then you get a big drop afterwards, and then it goes back up to normal. I thought, why are you getting a big drop? I got a small grant to get a better medical quality oximeter that could actually record this. And I'm going to show you an enlargement here, but across the board, when you focus on relaxation, slow the breath with Qigong, Tai Chi, and similar exercises, it goes up or stays up in that normal level, but then afterwards, it'll drop anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 8, 12%, and then go right back up. I'll show you an enlargement here in a second. One thing that is worth noting, though, is as I'm doing my initial studies were people who were practicing Tai Chi. A lot of people who practice Tai Chi, they do so because they have a chronic condition. What I found is people that are really healthy, I don't necessarily get that drop. And that's something that we really need to look at and find out is there something with the body. So looking at, again, theory development, I was curious if, since you're relaxed and you're breathing deeper and slower, and when you're in stage 2 and 3 sleep, you're relaxed and you're breathing deeper and slower, do you get these drops during sleep? And you do get these drops, which in the literature, they're very brief, they're very momentary, they're down to below 92% or so. It's considered just aberrant drops. You know, it just drops, just random, it doesn't mean anything. My suspicion is these drops may indicate, it'd be interesting to see if they occur at the end of different stages of sleep. You go from, you know, stage 2 back up to stage 1 sleep. Do you get the drop during that transition? The heart rate changes a little bit. You drink, sink into stage 3 sleep, go back up to stage 2, stage 1. Does this affect oxygen use in the body? Does it relate to healing? I do have a chart up there. Just I've had doctors just say, well, maybe the person had COPD or some condition. COPD, you see that big red line, there's a drop below that red dotted line, if you can see it in here, is 92%, which is considered below that in particular. You got to call the doctor if you're in the emergency room, it sets off an alarm. But for the person with COPD, it's staying down below 92%, down to 85% in some cases for 2 hours or more. So this is different. It's very brief. Why does it drop? Very briefly? And this is where brand new research or ongoing research, but something we need to look at a lot. So from a theory, the theory that I've come up with that may explain it, it needs to be validated. But the blue lines here, while you're doing these exercises, we are also looking at slower paces of walking. Right now, walking at any speed tends to be grouped as aerobic exercise. What researchers are starting to realize is that unless you're speed walking at 4 or 5 miles an hour, three to 4 or 5 miles an hour, speed walking, you're not getting your heart rate up to cardiovascular levels. So at slower paces of walking, go for a nice relaxing walk in the country. You're doing Tai Chi, you're doing Qigong. Is your body using oxygen at a higher rate? So just like when sleep, during cellular regeneration and cellular healing, your metabolism is working towards healing. Is it using oxygen at a higher rate? So is there a shift between oxygen metabolism during a state of healing and rest with like deeper levels of sleep, relaxation exercises, even sitting meditation, relaxing, focusing on the breath? And then when you go back to normal daily activity, does the metabolism shift to normal metabolism? And during that shift, could that explain the momentary brief drop, sometimes down to levels of head levels as low as 82%, which is very brief and goes right back up to normal? So this is all theoretical. We need to look at and find out, why is the drop? Is it linked to the benefits, the health benefits that are reported in some of the research supports in different areas? If you can focus on the relaxation, does that help with that area? I'm going to kind of wrap up here. So let's do one more exercise. I want to share a Qigong type exercise here with you. And then we'll go to wrapping up with some of the barriers and limitations with addressing these things. So the 8 pieces of silk brocade by Tuanchin is one of the most well-known of the Qigong exercises. My teacher said, if you're going to do just Tai Chi or just the 8 treasures or 8 pieces of silk brocade exercise for health, you recommend the 8 pieces of silk brocade. It's done in place, it was developed specifically for health. Whereas Tai Chi was developed as a martial art, but slowing it down and slowing the breath and focusing on the breath and body alignment, it makes it like Qigong. But they're both at benefits across different things depending on your focus. So if you'd like to follow this, I'm going to stay facing you here because it's a nice simple exercise. I'm just going to share the first one, drinking from the well. So you're just breathing in, abdomen expands, chest expands, bringing the hands up, expands the ribs, brings in lots of air. All the breathing's done through the nose. Tongue's touching the roof of the mouth, and slowly breathing out. If you can't breathe through your nose, then breathe as you can. Breathing out, press down slightly, elongate the spine gently. Cupping the hands, breathing in. About chest level, like you're drinking from the well. Turn the hands over and breathe out, press down. Straighten the spine a little bit and relax. Breathing in. Hold the breath, press once, twice, and slowly breathing out. Since we don't have hands in front of us, the focal point could be a spot on the wall, breathing in, a spot on the floor, or just the sensation of the breath in the nostrils. And then when the hands come in, the hands can capture the eyes. Breathing out, gentle stretch the spine, then relax, cup the hands, so you link the fingers. Breathing in and breathing out. This is very relaxing. Mind is focused on the movement. You're bringing in lots of air, breathing in. Hold the breath, press once, twice, and slowly, like your hands are floating down through water. Sometimes it can be hard to move that slow. We're just not used to that. We have such a fast-paced life. Breathing in, like the hands are floating up through water. And breathing out. Stretch and relax. Breathing in and out. Breathing in. Again, all these can be done while you're sitting. Slight modifications in bed, wheelchair. Hold the breath and breathe out. And we are running short on time, so I'm going to end with just that repetition there. I want to end with a few, looking at some of the limitations and barriers, because it'd be nice to just say, go out, find yourself a Tai Chi teacher or Qigong teacher, and you're all good to go. But it's good to have a little bit of background. It's just like if you're going to go to the gym and you wanted to find an exercise teacher and you just go and say, hey, I want to exercise, and you end up with like an Olympic weightlifter and he has you bench pressing 300 pounds, you're going to get a different effect than somebody who might, okay, just real briefly. So there's a lot of books in medical research. I mentioned that they tend to, for the researchers, they're researching benefits. They're really not sure why, and they go to the traditional Chinese medicine, that qi, the energy source. And I wanted to highlight the part about pain here, that's been pretty uniform across studies, books, and like Harvard has a site that has a lot of benefits and documents, and there's the Harvard Medical School Guide to Tai Chi, but it's rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. So it talks about qi. The benefits are coming through the development of qi, vital energy. When your qi is freely flowing, you're balanced, healing. Tai Chi promotes that flow of Tai Chi. The energy flows throughout the body to unblock and encourage the proper flow of qi. If you look at oxygen, energy, there's a link, but that can be a barrier. I guess we'll start with barriers here. I mentioned it started as a martial art. Well, there are a lot of teachers out there. The Wikipedia page on Tai Chi for the longest time, they have different people who moderate those. And they may have gone to a traditionalist Tai Chi master, and he would take out any references to health. If someone added a reference to health, he would take it out and his focus on martial roots. Now it's a little broader. But you see this nice statement here about how Tai Chi flushes the nerves, internal organs, extra energy, and the like. These are the responses. If you honestly think that's Tai Chi, you're misleading people. They're looking at the combat. Tai Chi is a martial art. Unfortunately, it does not get you fit enough for actual combat. Form practice is not a martial art. So you will find some schools and teachers, the majority, I'd say now, are focused on health, but that tends to be sometimes a barrier. There's also many different styles of Tai Chi. The Chen style is fast and hard. A lot of people have been adopting it to be more like a Yang style Tai Chi, focusing on relaxation. There's also more modern styles where sometimes it can lose some of the essential qualities. Being single weighted and the shifting of the weight, the focus on spine alignment and the like. There's also whether they're, let me get to the next slide here because I want to make sure we get through this here. Okay. So there's a lot of different styles, and time, pace, and dose I want to particularly stress on here is for general benefit, maybe you do these exercises once a week, twice a week. If you have a specific condition, you may be needing to do it every day. Some people, I know some of the case stories, I've collected a lot of case stories with cancer since that's what's got me looking at that area. And a lot of these people are doing hours of Tai Chi a day because they really are, they don't have anything out there. Chemotherapy is not working, they're trying anything. So dosage is an important part. How much time, pace, because a lot of people have been trying to understand a benefit with Tai Chi. It's actually been grouped as a moderate aerobic activity, but you have to get your heart rate up to a certain level. And so some of the modern schools, they'll have you do Tai Chi, kind of like aerobics, really fast to try to get your heart rate up, but then it's not Tai Chi anymore. But the number of times and the frequency you do it, most of the studies from the medical perspective, they'll have people doing Tai Chi 2, maybe 3 times a week for like up to an hour. Well, if you need to do it every day, maybe multiple times a day, then you're not going to see benefits. But even that 2 or 3 times a day, there's still a lot of reporting benefits for pain. There's also a difference between learning Tai Chi and doing it. So if you get a bunch of people in for a 12-week study, they may be spending a large portion of the 12 weeks learning it. With a traditional Tai Chi teacher, there may be a very long learning curve versus some of the people that managed to adapt it to where you can join in and jump in, just like we did, following it right off the bat. I just touched briefly on this. So I mentioned a competitive weightlifter. Qigong literally means breathing exercise. You walk in, you could get who knows what for Qigong. Most of it's been fairly standardized at this point that it'll be focusing on the breath, relaxation in place. going through a range of motions or stationary, focusing on the breath. But you can end up with some very unusual Qigong exercises. In Tai Chi, again, there's several different styles you could end up with. So if you go in, you say, hey, I want to exercise, and you end up with a 300-pound bench presser, and say, okay, here, press these weights. It's not necessarily going to be what you're looking for. There's also the background. A lot of people feel that you've got to have a Tai Chi teacher that has years of experience, that's from a legitimate master, that's family's been doing it for generations, that maybe they're certified. There's no really official certification right now, but there are people who will certify anything. One of these will certify you, but on the test it says you acknowledge that it's an aerobic exercise. There may be some problems there. But I have highlighted in, when I was doing a survey of Tai Chi programs, I visited different Tai Chi programs in the United States. And one of the best teachers, she focused on relaxation. She was able to get, she had almost 50 people in this big auditorium at the rec center. And she's up on a stage, and they would follow her through. They looked good. Their pace was good. Their breathing good. She looked good. And I asked about where she learned Tai Chi. She learned from a DVD. And she was, all the people I looked at, most of them were focusing on the martial or different adaptations. She was staying more true to the principles of Tai Chi and teaching it, having learned from a DVD. That really kind of made me rethink about what does it mean to have a good quality instructor. I'm going to try to finish this up here real quick. I will mention that since she felt that teaching it, she should get certified. So she learned from the Paul Lamb's DVDs. She went to him, took some of his certification programs, and she did get some formal training. One of the schools I looked at as a yoga school, and I watched their Tai Chi Qigong class, and it looked like what's a form of yoga that's very similar to the Qigong breathing, but it was not Tai Chi, and they asked him about it. And the yoga teacher said, well, we had people who wanted to learn Tai Chi, but we didn't teach Tai Chi, so we just call this Tai Chi, but it's the same thing we teach in our yoga class. And he mentioned he got a person from a school down the street that taught it as a martial art. The 70-year-old gentleman went in there, and the teacher during training threw him to the ground, slammed him to the ground with a throw, because that's what he taught as a martial art. So the person then ended up at this yoga school doing yoga Tai Chi. Competition. Sometimes you get people who are competitive, and you think, okay, I got a person who's a gold medal winner. They actually have Tai Chi competitions. He must be good. But gold medal winners, they tend to focus on large, deep movements, and it's not necessarily focused on their relaxation. They don't necessarily have the health background. There's again certification issues. So finish up here really quick. We're just going to go. I don't think we have time for this activity, but there's an exercise here that's kind of interesting. So there's a lot of John Kabat-Zinn I mentioned. I'm just going to go through some of his books. Tomio Horai looked at the EEG and brain waves. John Austin did a really big book on the physiological aspects of brain. There's just a growing field. Some of the David Brazier has a Zen therapy, really good book for looking at some of the traditional roots within the Zen philosophy. And I wanted to mention briefly, I would say probably 90% of mindfulness programs, they're focused on sitting meditation. In the Eastern traditions, any activity that focuses the mind, whether it's sitting meditation, counting the breath or on the focal point, or Zen archery, Eugene Herrigel, 1948, went to Japan, and he felt to really understand Zen philosophy, he needed to study a Zen art, and he practiced Zen archery. His book was written at a time when we really didn't know a whole lot about Zen, and it was presented more as a religion. And now we realize that it's more of a philosophy and psychology than it is really. It's really looking at focusing on understanding and training the mind, and the role of suffering and depression and all that is a huge part of Zen traditions. I wrote a book when I was curious about the hypoxia. I did the initial measurements and the like. I researched a range of conditions, including for chronic pain and the like, and just presented research on how hypoxia and oxygen deficiency affects and relates to it. And then research has been done on Tai Chi and the benefits, and then some recommendations, tips and training, mindful exercise. So that's a useful resource to kind of get a good background and overview. And the instructions mentioned that experiential storytelling and the like. People learn through stories. I have a book I've been. I haven't. I'm talking to a publisher now about formal publication, but I've used this book in my classes. I use it in the prison education system. You essentially follow the journey of these three characters throughout their Zen training. They're dealing with life and adventures. It's a fictional story, but at the end, there's a workbook where you apply the principles to your own life. And I am going to end there as we're pretty much at the end of our time and see if there's any questions that, let's stop the share here. Actually, yeah, we'll stop the share here. So, any questions or that I can answer?
I think we have time for maybe one question or reaction. If you want to share a thought, you can go ahead and put yourself off mute or raise your hand.
There's so much information. I want to share a good broad overview, but there's just there's so much.
I do see one hand, but I can't hear you. You're not on mute, but yet I still can't hear you. I see your mute is turned off.
If you'd like to enter your question in the chat, I can see if I can reply back to you later if you have a specific question. I'm not.
That's true. And I can, yes, and in the chat, or we can certainly forward an email later.
And I will mention that. Oops. Oh, I don't actually seem to have the screen up. I was going to share. I just put together. Whoops. A Facebook page with research and case stories. I haven't updated it for a while because I'm focused on community health and rural health right now, but it has some of the actual research and scientific studies that you can look into. If you look up, I'm throwing the word metaerobics because you got aerobics for cardiovascular exercise. Ken Cooper coined that word back in the 1960s, realizing that running is different from lifting weights. And then we got anaerobics with weightlifting. I thought we need something that it describes slow-moving, breath-focused exercise. And since it enhances oxygen metabolism, the initial research, I coined the word metaerobics. So if you Google that, you'll pull up Facebook and some other things that share some information on it.
Okay, we do have a question in the chat.
Weeping. Yeah, so I was very curious. I started doing research on sleeping, and I showed you the one chart. It shows that periodically the measurements will get a dip ever so often in oxygen saturation, similar to the dip you get following Tai Chi. 90% of the research on sleep tends to be with sleep apnea and COPD and the like. Very few studies have been done on healthy people, but there were people that said, hey, we should do some sleep studies with healthy people. So we have a comparison. There's 3 studies in particular that really looked at what happens during normal sleep. And they mention the drop in blood oxygen saturation, but they say they think it's just a random drop. It doesn't mean anything. My suspicion is that these periodic drops are related to your body is metabolizing oxygen differently. And yes, a lot of cellular healing, cellular regeneration occurs during sleep. You go to sleep, your body goes into a healing state. That when you're relaxed through Tai Chi, your body goes into a healing state, and you seem to have some benefits. These are side story. We need research, but I know that if I miss 2 or 3 hours of sleep, I seem to be able to make up for it with a half an hour Tai Chi. It just really restores the body. But I still recommend getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep. That's really key.
Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Gryffin, for your wonderful presentation. This has been very illuminating and eye-opening on this area of research that you have on the health benefits of Tai Chi. And I think it very much aligns with what we've been doing in our chronic pain management program that does have a mindfulness component in the intervention. And so thank everybody for attending. There is a link in the chat for the survey. And we really appreciate you. The GAs, you want to share when our next seminar will be?
Yes, thank you all for coming and thank you, Dr. Gryffin. Our next seminar will be on January 21st from 12 to 1 p.m. via Zoom. So we are very excited for that upcoming seminar, and we encourage you all to put that in your calendar so that you can join us again after the holiday.
Thank you, everyone, and take care. We'll also send out the link to all participants for the survey. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.